Hi, everyone. I am Miss Lucia Fuchsia.
And I'm Benjy Bradshaw, and we're here today with the creators of the HBO series. We're here, Stephen Warren and Johnny Ingram.
How are you guys doing? Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for
We
having us.
we are thrilled to be talking to you.
So we're just so excited to be here with you guys today. You know, Benjy and I, we've been just binge watching this show, and it's been really amazing. I've been feeling all of the emotions, happy, sad, touched. You know, it's just been really a beautiful experience just to watch it. And, you know, we're just so excited to kind of sit down and hear kind of the background of what inspired this show and the messages you wanted to get across with it. So let's kick it off with you, Benjy.
Yeah, perfect. So I guess, we are here, we're all here together, and it's 2020. And so I just want to know what made 2020 the time for this show, and what makes it, an important time for us to talk about what's going on.
Well, I'm from a small town. I grew up in eastern Tennessee, actually not very far from where Eureka grew up, but maybe a little closer to Dolly Parton or Dollywood. So somewhere in between Eureka and Dolly Parton is where I grew up. And I don't think it took a while for me to have a first interaction with the drag community, but I definitely identified as a gay man very young in life, and I knew pretty much since I was a little kid. And it was really nice to see, when I finally got a chance to interact with the drag community, just how amazing an experience it was. And I later on went to work in some drag bars in Chicago during college, and I just got to meet so many amazing artists, and the community was so supportive, and I just really learned a lot about myself. And I think, we as creators have both been advocates and sort of watching the world around us just really struggling. We wanted to create something that could maybe create change. So I wanted to take that experience and put it on the road and take it into smaller communities, because it's really great. I've lived in New York, I've lived in LA, actually in Williamsburg for about 6 years, and it's such a wonderful experience to be able to have access to the drag community, but a lot of people don't. So taking that experience on the road was the idea. And I know there's a lot of other other shows that have actually done that in a more of a filmic perspective, or something a little bit more different type of storytelling, but really doing it in a way that could create change. And that's why the idea came to life.
And what we really wanted more than anything was, you asked why 2020. We really wanted to explore what we were hoping to be able to show to the world, that connection can exist in places that you wouldn't otherwise expect. And that everyone in the world, it's so depressing of how we are screaming at each other so often. And that I think what the show really proves, and drag is the instrument to help us do that, with three incredible queens who are as talented as anyone I've ever met. This is a vehicle to be able to show how connection can exist in the world where you wouldn't otherwise think it could happen.
Exactly. Yeah, and we felt that. I think when you watch this show, you feel those stories and you feel those emotions, and it's just one of those things where 2020 is the time. I think it's now. It's time for us to start talking. It's time for us to make changes. And I want to just thank you both from the bottom of our heart, for creating such an amazing series with heartwarming stories. And every episode, I was crying. I mean, it was the soul really comes in through that show, and the stories that you shared. It's just, it's funny because I didn't live. All these experiences are different, and everyone has their own unique, intricate place in the queer society. But the fact that I could feel the emotion and feel the passion of these people, and I think it was beautiful. So I just want to thank you both. I think this is the time, and we need to keep it going.
We cried every single time we watched every cut. And then while we were there during the performances, there were things that would shock us, because we got to know the drag daughters over the course of the time we were spending with them. And in every instance, something wonderful happened in terms of them finding some part of themselves or opening up to the world. And it was revelatory for us to be involved.
Were there any of the drag daughters that kind of stuck out to you as somebody that had a really interesting story that kind of putting them into drag kind of brought them into a sense of their either queer self or just self in general?
You know, I think one of the funniest ones that I never would have expected, like you never know what's going to happen when you first start, was Stacy. Stacy, you know, in
Fire Marshal Stacy.
Fire Marshal Stacy. In, you know, the Rustin episode, he is a straight man who is just comfortable in his own skin and who doesn't like anyone to feel left out. You know, he was always that guy who would go to Sundown Tavern and he would like, you know, tell people like, stop picking on this person or whatever. He would do that. But when we talked with him afterwards and after he did that performance, something changed in him where he realized he has so much more power as just this man who's lived his life. Because of what he did, he impacted people and he's been impacting people who have been watching this in ways that we didn't expect.
Right, that's just so beautiful. It was really amazing to follow the different stories of all the different drag daughters. It was quite a journey for all of us, you know. So my next question is, you know, drag comes from a really kind of place of poking fun at gender norms of what females are supposed to be viewed as in society. And, you know, drag is very campy and fun and upbeat. But, you know, in your show, you guys kind of touch on some really kind of dark topics that aren't usually expressed through the art of drag. So I'm really just kind of curious what the message was that you guys wanted to try to get across from, you know, bringing a different light to drag and showing it in a different way.
This type of storytelling is different. I mean, RuPaul is doing a wonderful job, you know, elevating the drag community into like, I mean, it's just now exploded. It's wonderful. So we wanted to share a different side, and I think in order to do that, we wanted to tell more human stories, and the human stories not only of our own cast members, which you got to experience with the 6th episode, even though that wasn't really the intention. You would get little pieces in each episode of Bob, Shangela, and Eureka, but really to tell some human stories of people that exist in these small communities that we are sometimes quick to judge on who, you know, who exist in sort of between LA and New York. And so maybe we're misunderstanding, or maybe we can get to know the people that are on the ground there a little bit deeper. And in doing so, what if we could tell their stories through the performance art of drag? So this making the song meaningful, making the costume, the makeup meaningful, relevant to their story, and then them celebrating their personal individuality enhanced to the upteenth degree on a stage in front of their peers, their family, their friends, and celebrating how important they are to their communities, and embracing that. You know, I'm not a big star. I don't live in the big city, but I can be a big star here in my community.
Yes, exactly. And you know, on that point of camp, one observation I had was kind of the camp in the American culture, you know, whether it be those like neon signs in the strip clubs or the monster truck rally when there was this holographic truck that looked like a drag queen almost. It was like sparkly. So I'm wondering, since you were there, I mean, when you're looking at these communities and America in general, and there's these elements of drag, why do you think people have such a hard time accepting a drag queen when we're just as campy as everything else?
I think honestly, what the show really proves is as soon as you get to know people, it makes no difference. Everyone's the same. Everyone has the same desires. Everyone has the same fears, the same longings, and that what drag does is it allows you to express yourself in a way without fear. You may enter it with some fear, but all of a sudden when you go out there and you perform and you feel the energy of the crowd and you feel what you're capable of, it's something that I think changes people's lives.
And drag is often misunderstood. I mean, coming from a small town, and even when I told my mom I worked at a drag bar, it was like what? It's like it was like, oh, I don't know how to react to this. I'm like, Mom, it's the best thing in the world. I can't wait for you to come. And when she came, the experience she had was just overwhelming. I think she just legit really leaned in and had a great time. I mean, if once you get to understand drag and you know, yes, it's political. Yes, there's all these attributes to drag that are unique and usually depends on the artist that's performing and what they want to perform or the message they want to send, or just entertain. But there's something magical that is. That happens when a drag performer comes in. It's like everyone just can let loose, have a fucking good time, and shake off whatever struggles or, you know, anything they've had along the day, and just sort of have, you know, and sing a song or do a little dance or, you know, or whip out some money. It's sort of like it's just a fun time, and people often misunderstand what drag is actually about, and what we really wanted to do was tell a different side of the drag story.
Bob at one point says to Daryl in that first episode, you know, if drag is one thing, it's fun. And that I think is communicated through the show, so that you realize, just like looking at you guys now, it's fun. You can have fun. You can let loose. I think, you know, answering your question, why are people so uptight about it? Because they haven't been exposed to it. Once you're exposed to it and you see that it is something that's beautiful, it's fun, it can be not good, people could have no talent.
Have you been to a Dolly Parton concert? Have you been to a Cher show? Have you been to any? It's the same. These are drag queens. Lady Gaga is a drag queen.
Yeah, it all just comes from the same place, you know. It's hard, yeah, when people just aren't exposed to drag. It's, you know, y'all were in some really conservative areas, like in the middle of America, that, like, you know, y'all run it coming in, it was like the opposite of what they were used to. So were there any moments that you guys kind of felt uneasy and unsafe, kind of being the odd ones out, you know?
Yep. I mean,
there were definitely times, but I gotta say that being number one, we had a whole crew and we had a whole cast with us, and that, you know, I've always, and Johnny has always led with, I think, care, sensitivity, intelligence, you know, so that we get into the town, we have a whole crew around us of people, and that what we would do is we would really get to know the fabric of the town. So we would go to the restaurants, all the cafes, we would get to know all the waiters, you know, we'd invite everybody to the show. We'd go to the barbershop. Like in several of the towns, the barbershops happen to be the most conservative places in the town. And you see things that are on the walls of these barbershops that, you know, you don't see in New York and Los Angeles, that's for sure. But then you ask the barber afterwards, like he goes, what are you doing here? And we say, oh, we're here for this drag show that we're putting on for HBO, blah, blah, blah. And that, you know, we invite them to come. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. But then several times what happens is the wife of the barber actually came. And then the wife of the barber goes back, tells the barber, you know, this was one of the most fun things I've ever done, you know, and they feel like they have a new experience in life and that they're able to actually connect with people that they didn't connect with before.
But we did have a few, I mean, some of the experience, but a lot of people would not sort of share their experience on camera as they would when the cameras were off. I mean, if you notice from the very beginning, the gentleman in the hat store, you know, we caught the audio of that, but it wasn't, you know, he wasn't willing to yell at that on camera. I've had an experience, you know, in other towns where, you know, somebody just came up to me and just flipped me off, and then drove around in their vehicle around their camp space, flipping at the whole camp space. But I'm like, you know, it's harmless. But at the same time, you know, I wish they just showed up to the drag show. They probably did, which is funny, just sort of because they were so curious. But there are some things that made it a little uncomfortable. But at the same time, I feel like we did handle this with care. And I know Bob, Shangela, and Eureka were very, you know, wanted to leave the town with a good impression, and also a lot of people who had this was their first interaction with the drag community wanted to leave a good impression versus going in and returning the middle finger.
Totally, yeah, exactly. And I want to thank you for that. It's really important to know. And, you know, I wanted to add on to that as well about something Shangela said in one of the episodes where she went on the stage and said, it doesn't matter if you're from a small town or a large town, it's about the heart that counts, something like that. I'm just paraphrasing. But that really hit home for me because it's about that love. It's going to we're all similar in that sense. I guess I want to know from you, what did you, from your experience on the ground, filming, or your previous life experience, what have you learned from these small towns that maybe somewhere like us in Brooklyn, because that's where we're at right now, what can we learn from you guys and what you've learned?
I know, having being from a small town, I've lived in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, and I've lived in the city. I've lived in Los Angeles, lived in Chicago, I've lived in Toronto. I basically left small town Tennessee in search of another home. And a lot of people sort of, I think, and we're so easily convinced, especially these days, that we're all out to get each other, that we're really not as divided as things are made out to be. And I think the most important thing is to understand that some people's journey to understanding or towards acceptance or towards understanding the community better just takes a little time. And to be patient with the people that we have neglected in the center of the United States, because they just need exposure. They need a little bit of time to sit and understand, to watch maybe our show, maybe watch a documentary, read a book. It's a lot to ask of people who probably have their own problems and struggles and daily things that they have in their lives. But it's important for us to take the time, instead of yelling at them on our phones and through social media, is to take the time and, if you can, sit down with someone and share a story and make it personal for them, so they understand, oh, if I vote for that person, then that means that person that I love could hurt that person. So I think just creating emotion behind and seeing an individual and a face to the community is makes huge difference. And I think if you can go, I know, sometimes it's like, go on a little trip to some cute little town and be visible and be yourself. It's safe. It really is safe to be yourself, and hopefully in broad daylight, depending on which neighborhood. Don't take that full advice, but there is it is a journey to get there.
I think it's also like to put it in like a little package. I think one of the biggest lessons we learned is to slow down, because when we live in Los Angeles, what we do for our everyday jobs and how we conduct ourselves, going to the stores, the gym, whatever we're doing, restaurants, we move at a different pace than exists in these small towns. And that one of the most wonderful parts of our experience was going into the little stores, going on the streets, going into the Starbucks, and just talking to people, because, number one, there's not a lot of stores to be going to. There's not a lot of things to be doing.
And there's not a lot of drag shows happening in town. So it's like
something
to talk about.
And you get to learn. I think one of the biggest lessons is people can both ways make enormous impressions on each other. So many people made impressions upon us, and I hope we made positive impressions on so many of the people we met. There was like one guy, one of our favorite things is, the suitcases that the three of them have.
Yeah.
So Johnny and I were in Gettysburg, and that there's this store that I just loved. That it's just this little artisan, this guy who paints signs. And I loved that store. So I kept on saying, Johnny, I love this store. I love this store, because it was just cute stuff.
And I love typography, so we both got really excited, geeked out.
And so we went in there, and then we thought, oh, this is a perfect opportunity. We gave these suitcases, we had them made, and gave them to the queens as gifts. And then, we've wound up actually using them in all the episodes. But the guy that did it, that made those suitcases, when I said to him what it was for, he was like, oh man, if my friends knew what I was doing now, I don't know what they would say. And so we got into a dialogue about that, and I said, I invited him to the show, and he goes, I don't know if I can come, but I know that just because we talked and that I appreciated his artistry, which I loved, and I think he hopefully watched the show and could appreciate that we painted that town in a wonderful light. We really showed each of these towns in loving lights. We didn't demonize anybody. We just told the truth of what our experience was. I hope that interaction changes things.
Yeah, exactly. The suitcases and like all of that. And I think it all ties into my next question, and then I'll hand it back over to Lucia, is that, the cinematography is gorgeous in this show, as we've said. And I wanted to talk to you about the fashion, because that
Right?
was a
Yeah,
highlight.
come on.
We can't ignore that in this interview here. So I just want to know in a nutshell, I know you guys had a lot of work to do, but can you give us a little brief overview of kind of what you guys put into that fashion to make the fashion happen on the show, and a little bit about that process?
Wow, that is, we have an incredible, passionate team of creative people, and like the full fantasy we brought to these small towns. And it's hard because, a lot of our designers are from New York, LA. Actually, one lives in Lexington, Kentucky. But that's where their shops are with all of their sort of access to materials. So they had to sort of bring that to wherever we were going, which was really, really challenging. And not to mention, we were crafting, like I said before, these original wardrobe based on the stories of the people. So we're getting to know our drag daughters at the same time we were concepting what it is they're going to perform in their song. So it's fast-paced. These designers are working around the clock, I think, in this not a glamorous hotel sort of conference room with the most, like, I think we have probably spread more glitter on conference room floors across America. Like it's in that carpet forever.
There's worse things to spread.
Yeah, no, it was a tough job, but I think all of our designers.
Yeah, I loved going into these places, these conference rooms. That was one of my favorite spots in each of the towns.
That's another show.
Yeah, it is so fun to just see everyone crammed in together, and that lots of times there's no talking because they're working so hard. Other times there's music going. The other times, that there's like just hilarious stuff that's going on. But it is like creative genius that you can see happening in each of these designers and the people working with the designers, and then the Wigs and Grace, Abdil is phenomenal, but you get everybody in this place together and magic happens.
We had a rotating, we have a rotating sort of creative group. Some of our most frequent visitors would be Domino, Diego, Patrick, and Gloria from Wigs and Grace. Basically all in a tiny conference room, creating almost like a on the road house of we're here to create all of this awesome wardrobe. I mean, the entrance looks we were trying to get to a point where those were done ahead of time. But still, you have to do all the fittings and all the finishing portions of those entrance looks. It's a lot.
So I just have one final question. Obviously we're in a pandemic and things are crazy right now. Otherwise, we'd have you guys here. But I was just curious if you guys have any words of wisdom or just nice words for anybody watching that might need it.
To those people.
I'd say through any hardships, any hard times, and we've all experienced them, there's always light on the other side. Just continue to know that, see that it gets better, it will get better, regardless of where you're at, where you come from. It just sometimes take a little bit of time. This is going to be longer than we would hope, but at the end of the day, it will get better. There is light on the other side, and it's going to be a lot better. We're going to be better people. We're going to be a better country. And it's going to be, I think, lots of opportunities to create change once we get out of this mess.
And I think also, like what you both are doing in terms of, doing your drag shows online, do something that makes you happy, that could potentially spread a little bit of love in the world. And it helps you cope. It helps you get through some of those times when you get too in your head and thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? It's like, reach out to your friends, go do a drag show online, do something that, is going to help somebody else or touch somebody else. And that's really the biggest lesson I think that we've learned.
Right. Yeah. And your show just highlights that as well. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. It's been so amazing just kind of hearing your story and kind of getting some background knowledge about the show. But we just wish you guys could be here. It's just, we so badly wish y'all could be here with us.
No,
Do you have any
I mean,
idea?
we-
HBO had so many plans for us. We were going to be in the Pride Parade, all the Queens. We were going to be at South by Southwest. We had our big LA premiere.
we were
Everything's
going to carry
canceled.
Ross Matthews on our shoulders down.
Yeah, I love that. I would love to see that.
Well, don't worry. We're gonna have another chance, and it's gonna happen. And you guys, we have the internet.
Next season, we're going to celebrate all together
Yes.
in person.
Yes, you have to come
Yes.
to one of our local drag shows. They're amazing.
Yeah, and it makes me feel every single emotion. It's just been such a journey watching the show. So for everyone back home, you can stream We're Here on HBO and just watch it. It just is so touching, so beautiful, and there's so many amazing stories. So yeah, thank you so much for being here virtually. And
Thank you guys.
we really hope to see you guys real soon.
We'll see you soon. Stream it, everyone. Stream it.
Thank you for
Thank
having us.
Thank you so much. Stay
All right.
safe.
Of course.
Yes,
We'll
stay
see you guys
safe.
soon.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.